probably one of the most highly requested topic that we have from our community of mid-career professionals who are making some sort of a transition in their career. So the topic is advancing your AI product management career at top companies, and we have two really well experienced and I would say not just professionals from the field, but somebody who has a lot of experience helping others also growing and achieving their goals within the field. So they are backstage. It's Kunal Parekh from Microsoft and Hrishikesh Kunte from BCG. We'll be bringing them up here now. Hi, good evening, Kunal and
Hey,
Rishikesh. Welcome again. Good
hey
to have you.
Arjun. Hello everyone.
Hi, hello.
Thanks again so much for making time for this. I know both of you have done this before, so you understand the format and everything. I think what we can do is a quick round of intros and then dive right into it.
Yeah,
I can go first because even though there's a pivot event, but I'm sure there are a lot of new people who are joining us for the first time. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Arjun and I'm the founder. Like I said, we started Pivot in 2021. It's been over 5 years now. We have worked with about 10,000 plus professionals, mostly mid-career people who are making some sort of a transition, going from one role to another, usually at some sort of an inflection point in their career. And this is our bread and butter. We'll talk more about how exactly we help people, but we partner with folks like Kunal and Rishikesh who provide their time and expertise very generously on our platform to help other mid-career professionals achieve their goals. Yeah, with that, I would turn it over to Kunal first. Kunal, welcome again. And if you could just share a bit about your background and what you do today at Microsoft, that'd be great.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Arjun, for this opportunity. Hello everyone. Very excited to talk and share my thoughts with you. I'm Kunal and I'm a principal PM at Microsoft. I have overall 15 years of experience, and since last 4.5 years, I've been in Microsoft working on data platforms and also building a lot of AI initiatives as well. Um, Also, interestingly, I'm also spending a lot of time on why AI products fail as well. So, which would be closer to the topic which we are just going to discuss. Despite all the progress that we have made on the tools and so on and so forth, right? So, what all different strategies which work, which doesn't work, and also on my spare time, I also work on building a lot of pet projects, which basically helping me in terms of maybe investment and also using all the cool tools. And yeah, would be looking forward to the conversation.
Great. Thanks, Kunal. And Rishikesh, over to you.
yeah, thanks, Arjun. So my name is Rishikesh. I'm partner with BCG. I primarily work in the tech and digital space and across, I mean, three, four sectors. So from an AI perspective, I can say that this is obviously one of the most hottest topic today, very rapidly evolving. I mean, probably as we speak, there are 10 things out there which have already changed and have grown to the next level. So I think, and with that, every sector, right? I mean, there is obviously AI today. The conversations have been happening in every sector, and I would say that being part of a consulting firm as large as BCG, we actually get to discuss these topics across industries, and this has been pretty much like conversation across all boardrooms, across all industries, across all companies. That how actually AI can help or cannot help. These are all topics that we discuss almost every day. Overall, like I've been working in the product space now for almost 20 years. Have worked with a bunch of startups as well as conglomerates before joining BCG. So happy to talk on this topic and share whatever I can from my experience.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rishikesh. So I think where we can start is slightly more bird's eye view level because I know we are going to get into the weeds very quickly, and the conversation will focus on deep insights. But I read somewhere recently, a lot of the Wall Street investors, which drive maximum amount of funding even in the tech space today, are considering AI still as a bubble. And the reason for that is that they're saying if you look at most of the hype around AI right now, that's mostly focused on valuations and fundraising. That's happening mostly in the West, right? But if you look at the actual impact from an organizational change perspective, it's there's hardly anything to show. And obviously, again, the topic is how to build your AI product management career. So, it's ironical if we think that this is a bubble and it's not going to change into actual ground reality. But I want to understand from both of you. This is the outsider perspective, right? People who are funding the space, they're looking at it, and many of times they are skeptical and calling it a bubble. At the same time, you all are working on tools which are very AI native, AI centric, and driving organizational change. Where is the discrepancy? Why are we seeing these two very uh, you know I would say diametrically opposite mindsets between people who are in the space building the AI infrastructure versus those who are outsiders and trying to look at the ground level impact that AI has caused so far? Kunal, we can start with you first, if that's okay.
Sure. I think it's a very pertinent question. And basically, if I understand the question correctly, it's like AI hype versus real product impact. Um, so let me address this by saying that what's in everyone's mind right now. Like, okay, if you look at AI is becoming a kind of a bubble, look at maybe the stock price of a lot of tech products in last maybe 1 or 2 months, which has dropped significantly. Valuations are high, funding is aggressive, every company is going for AI first. But to be fair, a lot is driven by the real product demos, announcement, future potential. A lot of bold statements coming that okay, it's going to replace maybe analysts, it's going to replace maybe engineers, it's going to replace this and that and all, right? So a lot of things are factual, but there are like we need to quantify the impact. So the measurable impact is basically missing, and that's where the challenge lies. So truth is both things can be true at the same time. Yes, there is a hype in the system, and yes, AI is fundamentally transformative. Like Claude Code launched last year in 20 March 2025, and look at the impact it has made in last 1 year. A lot of things on coding, research, drafting has transformed completely, right? Building maybe demos and all. A lot of design tools has become redundant now, right? So why? So let's try to understand why this gap exists on hype versus reality. Uh, the problem is impact is indirect. Okay, first and foremost. So AI improves decision, but not just an output. Okay, it is partially completing the workflow. Like if I look at an FTE resource, what they are doing, it is partially completing. It's not doing end-to-end work. So right now, like if I'm a product analyst, I want to know what is my customer churn, or if I'm a PM, I want to know what is my customer churn. I mean, the system still where I need to get the data from multiple sources, right? It is still not giving me the single source of truth, right? It has not reached to that level right now. The another one is adoption is very behavioral, right? User need to trust before basically they use, right? So and it is taking time, and also metrics lags a little bit of reality. So these are the three fundamental factors which I think why there is a gap exist. But if I if you ask me like what a kind of a strong professional should do, a PM, engineer, anyone, right? Uh, uh, we need to identify where is the opportunity, where can we add AI use cases, where can AI changes from summary to decision, okay, or partially workflow completion to end-to-end workflow completion. When I say partial, in the sense like as I give an example of like identifying customer churn, instead of identifying only maybe gathering the data from multiple sources, it completes the analysis completely and it will be ready for review to me, and then I will call that, yeah, okay, whether the citations are correct, whether the evals has been formed properly or not, right? So I mean there are multiple factors that we need to
Right.
look into. um, so instead of we need to understand a different lens, like instead of asking like does this use AI, does this make change or not, um, I think it's more like real value components. Like we need to bring from what it does, then how it values us, right? So that transformation is what we need to think through. And as I mentioned, like the how it has been transformative, because I think the thought process has changed completely. So creativity has no limit if you look at it right now, right? Otherwise, like we used to work on multiple tools and all, right? So um, building and building or evaluating AI products, it's a kind of a stress test. And with maybe if I remove AI, does the core value collapse? That's a question, right?
Yeah.
Maybe no, right? But yes, you are onto something meaningful, right? So my only the point is like, yeah, it's a judgment gap, I would say. But quantifiable, measurable impact is very much required in this
Yeah.
case, right? So yeah,
So
well,
I think that's a very good point, Kunal. And what I want to ask Rishikesh is a slightly different but related question. You might have heard, Satya Nadella couple of months ago made this bold statement that I will consider AI a success if I see its impact on GDP growth, not just based on valuation growth of companies that are driving the AI shift in the market. And that's a very good point, right? Because a lot of people are seeing AI as a job displacement kind of a tool, which means companies might become more profitable because of lower costs, but the end output will not really change, right? And that's why I think Satya Nadella kind of made this bold statement that it's not just about profitability; it's about like growing the pie of business, right? That we can do, like what internet did, what smartphone did.
Yeah.
Can you so a lot of times, and even what Kunal was mentioning, some of the things were like, hey, right now it's doing partial workflows. We needed to do full workflows. Claude code replaces 90% of the human code with AI code. But these are all replacements of things that were happening. Can you share your perspective? Where do you see AI actually creating new forms of revenue generation, which were not possible before, not just cost effectiveness and workflow optimization?
Yeah, so I'll just try to kind of put this into three perspective and also try to briefly answer your earlier or share my views on your earlier point. Uh, I'll try to put this into three areas. One is the big bet, the second is the evolution, and the third is the ROI. Right. So I think if we look at the landscape in this format, the initial, if we want to call it a bubble or valuation, etc., uh, the that is happening because people want to take, like, it's a big bet, right? So AI, yes, AI is there, models have evolved, models started, like it started with all having the right models in place. The models were not trained enough. Obviously everybody started using AI. The models are probably way better than what it was 12 months back. So that evolution has happened, right? I mean, people, the valuation, or the investors who have invested in these big companies or are looking at like valuation game, they are actually betting on, like, yes, this is going to change things at some point of the time. So right now is the right time to invest, so that obviously when it is ready, it is right, we can fetch the returns, right? So that is the first area. The second is, as I like, things that are coming out of it, like whether it's your models, whether the businesses that have been set up on those models, wrapper services, etc. Everything has evolved, right? So from where it started to where it is today, obviously everything has evolved, primarily also because the models themselves have evolved. And the third is why there is a discrepancy, or why even Satya Nadella is making this comment, is because, as I said, like the boardrooms are actually asking this question. Okay, fine, AI is there. We are talking about AI replacing stuff, whether they can automate stuff, etc. But first of all, are we there, right? I don't think we are there fully yet. So the things are evolving. Uh, Especially, like, I think we have crossed that era of generative AI, because people find it useful, but it is still not replacing stuff, right? So it is still, you need human to actually do stuff. You get things out of the models or the tools that you're using, but still you need the human to actually validate something. So it is just solved for efficiency and time, probably, but not for quality and decision making. What we are getting into right now is like the agentic world, where the processes are trying to get are being replaced, right? Hence the question on how do you make impact on your business? Can you reduce people? Can you create new business lines, etc., etc.? So I think if we look at the landscape in these three buckets, I think you need to rethink on how you think about AI, right? So it's till now we have been so the new terminology that has been using is the agent, the AI way of thinking, right? So you need to really think how the AI will think and how it can behave differently than what humans are doing. So rather than just thinking that I'm giving a task to the AI and it should execute, I think when you are actually asking the AI to do a business, think of it like it's an AI native business, and AI itself is starting a business. It's an AI company. How will it operate, right? So if we kind of mimic it into an agentic world, there will be a company, there will be like multiple divisions of that company. That division knows what their functions are, and then they are reaching out to people. They are actually getting the decisions back, and then they are kind of self-evolving and self-improving, right? So I think if we really look at the potential of AI, yes, it can get there someday. Are we there? Probably not. And I think that is the bridge that we need to cross, that how do we think in like more native AI terms and not just use AI as a tool. I think that is where the main unlock is for any business, right? So I think just automating stuff and kind of replacing your business processes by AI, that will just be kind of a RPA on a steroids, basically.
Right.
So I think that is where the businesses can rethink their like the fundamentals of business, which obviously can generate new revenue channels as well as uh, uh, can potentially start impacting the GDP.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that point that you just made about, kind of rethinking how you would build tools and products where, it's an AI led kind of mindset and AI native mindset. I think that makes a lot of sense. We were also just thinking about like new use cases which have been there. So one of the ones, like for example, which is really um, taking a lot of getting a lot of traction recently, is the whole voice AI
Yeah.
related products and tools. Right now, that is a new use case, right? That's a completely uncharted territory. There was no humans kind of doing that apart from using their own voice, but now you have tons of the AI avatars kind of mimicking voices.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of more people can, for example, build podcasts or content using those things. So
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. Now let's start connecting all of this with the topic of the day, which is product management.
Yeah.
Now, in this context, Kunal, what I would love to understand is perhaps how you are seeing the role of a product manager evolve in today's AI driven era. Um, and I know things are in flux very, very quickly. What we may have discussed a year ago when AI was, just starting to take shape, might be different than what we discussed today. So I would love to have like the most recent, latest, and greatest kind of insights that you are seeing in terms of AI's impact on product manager role.
Yeah. I think that's where the difference comes. I think couple of years back, maybe or 2 years back, every company started a kind of an AI PM role. Now it's a generic PM only, but because it is expected for you to know the AI nuances, AI skills, and everything, right? You should have that ability to build the skills maybe on Cloud Code or maybe Codex, CLI, or maybe let's say anti-gravity, all these tools which are basically helping you make the faster decision, right? So most people are preparing for a PM role for following couple of like standard methodology, like okay, learning Python, get API key from GPT, build a chatbot, and then edit to my profile, let me build some use cases, and which makes me a kind of a strong candidate for the IPM role, right? But uh, the question basically we are differentiate a candidate in terms of like marking the differences. Can you decide like what to build, why it matters, and who this particular product is going to change the behavior for, right? So rather than solving a kind of a problem only from for the sake of it, maybe it would be good to know like what behavior it's going to change, right? As we have taken few examples also, right? So like earlier we were taking maybe a lot of time on building codes and maybe documents and summaries and everything, right? A lot of things has simplified now, right? So what has basically changed is like we there are two types of PMs. If I take an example of it, like one PM who builds maybe a meeting notes or kind of a summarizer, right, which has become a kind of a big product in 2023 2024, Okay, now we have a chatbot like who is basically summarizing the meeting, and another PM who is building a decision support assistant, right? That flags the recurring unresolved decisions. Like what kind of decisions the PM used to make it on a day-to-day basis? Prioritization, right? Decision in terms of like whether we need to build this feature, in terms of like what metric is the right metric to be utilized for short term, long term, what segment are we basically targeting. So like I mean most of the LLMs are little easy to interpret, like maybe GPT 5.2 would be compared with maybe Claude Sonnet 4.6 and so on and so forth, right? But what second category of PM is doing is understanding something deeper in terms of real pain, which is not only nodes. It's not like too many text. It's like too many unresolved decisions, right? So if we could able to crack that part as a PM, where we it can be in form of a feature, it can be in form of a product, it can be in form of maybe building a separate skill. So let's say like a lot of PMs, what they do is like they have their own day-to-day activity. Okay, checking the metrics on a day-to-day basis, preparing queries, preparing documents, and so on and so forth, right? So they built a skill on top of that. So cloud skills are becoming very common nowadays, right? And on top of that, you can create your own tools using all this particular Lovable and Bolt.new and Replit and so many products which are available in the market right now, right? So how do you really build the level of product judgment, not just by maybe tutorials and random demos, right? But it also depends on how we think, right? So we are emphasizing more on the thinking part. As I said in the beginning also, the creativity has literally no limit at this point of time in terms of like how you really wanted to build the product. I'm talking only from the product management standpoint, right? How part is already covered by all these tools which I mentioned, right? Now, again, we are not talking about the quality of the code at this point of time, which is also another important aspect, which may come maybe little later. But at this point of time, what we are trying to do is like, okay, this is the problem. I wanted to build a planning tool. I wanted to build a prioritization tool, and this is the stack ranking, and this is what I should be able to do it, right? So we should start with like what decisions do users struggle with today, right? Is it is decision, it is data, it is AI opportunity. So this focus basically on anchoring the real pain point, and it is not tech curiosity that, oh, what would be my tech stack. I think no one is talking about tech stack right now, correct? Maybe standard coding, maybe standard for a couple of things would be really required, right? The second step is how we can design a failure path first. Happy flow, unhappy flow, correct? So before designing any happy path, we also need to understand where can it go wrong and what should happen and what would happen that time. Does the user notices or how can we recover, correct? So the PM should design a kind of a fallback flows. We always tend to follow on the happy flow, right? What would be the override mechanism, right? What could be the confidence signal? Like with all the chatbots right now, what we have right now, it's an eval framework which has been rephrasing, and they are bringing something new inside every time, correct? So a lot of content like privacy content, harmful content, like how you can basically control it, right? So it is becoming very common. So these are like 2 or 3 points which I thought maybe more on the thinking part on how it is going to change the behavior of the user, what all different edge cases that we need to look into, and also we need to learn a couple of new nuances. Like AI eval framework is something new which we really need to understand before making any AI product, because AI has a tendency to hallucinate, and how you can bridge that bar, how you can address that, right? What kind of mechanism that you will put in place, right? So most of the cases we have recently heard. So how we can provide a kind of a meaningful guidance at that point of time, and how we can basically keep some safeguards and guardrails mechanism over there, right?
Got it. Yeah.
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 So
No.
just take a pause. Yeah.
Yeah. No. That's very helpful to understand. I think where a lot of people kind of fall into certain pitfalls, when you are building things rapidly, experimenting, you might feel like you're going down the right path because you're building. But if it's not giving you the right skills, like you said, the difference between building an
Yeah.
AI note taker tool that was very massively popular in 23, 24 versus
Mm.
now building decision support, co-pilot kind of a tool,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
much more nuanced and sophisticated. I think, highlighting that is a very critical thing for product managers to understand what are the expectations. Rishikesh, that's the part that I want to focus on next, if possible, for you to highlight not just how AI is impacting the role of PM. A lot of it is covered by Kunal as well, but like, what are the companies now looking for when they hire and promote, make other workforce decisions related to product managers? What are companies really looking for in the top PMs today?
Yeah. See, so if the question is more from like a skill sets perspective, then I
Yeah,
think
skill set, and also like I would say the kind of output they are expecting them to
yeah,
drive, in
yeah,
addition to what was the expectation earlier,
yeah.
like pre-AI, let's say.
Sure. Okay. See, so the role obviously has become, I would say, the expectation has become more demanding, right? So because I think the topic itself is evolving, so there is a lot of gray area still now, till now, right? So nobody knows exactly how this is going to change, or so there is a lot of adaptability. That is the first expectation, that if you are working in this space, if you are playing with tools, if you are aware of AI, which I am assuming, if somebody's not really touched AI so far, then I think they're either not at all working in this space, or there is something drastically wrong here. So I think adaptability is like the first thing that people are looking for. That if you are working in this space, AI, how you are actually adopting to different tools and adapting the changes that are happening rapidly. I think the second area is where, like, I think the expectations from PM role has now kind of drastically moved towards the business outcomes, because earlier it used to be more like tech, but now AI as a topic is, so the business folks are not very fluent with AI as a topic. They understand it at a high level. The product manager's role is expected to actually get into the depth. And now, because they know the depth, they are expected to also talk about the business outcomes, right? So it's no more about I'm shipping this feature, but if you're doing or using AI, then why are you using it? What is the business impact? How is it going to change stuff for us? How are things changing, right? So that is the expectation, that you are leveraging AI, so you will also be now measured, or people are thinking about measuring this role on the business outcomes as well. I would say the second area, or the third area rather, is like, earlier obviously the product roles were expected to have a cross-functional role. They were pretty much interacting with all the departments that the product had a footprint with. I think that is now like a 2.0 version of it, right? Because specifically if you're using AI, you have to really spend time with the legal guys, because that is again like a big area where people are asking questions that, like, from a data perspective, privacy perspective, governance perspective, all these questions are coming, right? So there is an equal and more time being spent on the legal aspects of it. There is equal and more time spent on the operations. You need to spend time with data people. You need to spend time with engineering people. So that expectation of having a cross-functional alignments is now like a 2.0 or 3.0, whatever you want to call it, right? With this, the skill sets that are expected is, I would say, first, that you should be AI fluent, right? So you are in this space. If you are trying to be a product manager in today's data and age, you can't just talk about I'll do this feature, right? Because everyone is asking how are you going to leverage AI, and it should not just be superficial, because you need to really show the impact. So having just a AI fluency is not enough, but you need to really understand, as Kunal was explaining, the models, the evaluation, the trade-offs, like what are the limitations? Can I really use certain model to actually get the output that I'm desiring? If I use it, whether it would be like on a scale of 10, whether it would take me to 5 or 6 or 10, right? These all like in-depth understanding is what is expected. The second on the skills, I would say, is yes, there is a lot of enthusiasm on AI aspect, but I think with enthusiasm, you need to really get your hands dirty on evaluating stuff, and also experimenting a lot, right? Because as I said, like things are changing drastically overnight. You wake up every morning, there is something that has happened and something that has changed. So I think that entire understanding on how you can define the success metrics by actually experimenting and evaluating stuff and running tests, and then actually showing how it is functioning, proving that it is actually solving a problem and potentially to make a business impact. And the last, as I said, like, is basically like people are looking at how adaptable this workforce is, right? Specifically the PM category, because traditionally they have been looked at it from a lens of like, you are the product person, you probably don't understand business, or you don't understand operations. You are supposed to ship features, you are supposed to have discussions, write the PRDs, BRDs, and work with the tech folks, because you are our interpreters between a business and the tech person. So I think that adaptability and the expectation has changed, because now you know the tech or you know AI the best, but now you also need to understand the business aspect. And just to sum it up, I would say that I have personally believed that, like, even before AI, I have personally believed, and the teams that I've worked with and managed specifically, I've always tried to harness one point, that whatever small thing that you're working on, whether you're a product person, whether you're a tech person, you're actually making an impact on some metrics in the business. Whether you're working on a operation side of product, whether you're working on a sales, whether you're working on a direct to consumer product, if you think that your task is like just a Jira ticket, I think you have lost the battle, right? So you are actually making some impact, and if you keep on thinking in that loop, I think adapting to the AI and like thinking about the impact on the business, etc., would be very easy.
A very, very relevant point. Rishikesh, just a very
Yeah,
quick follow up, and
sure,
only because I feel like it will help enrich the
yeah,
points that you are making.
yeah,
The part where we are talking about like experimenting, right? We'll get into more detail. I want to bring Kunal into that discussion as well. But just very quickly, if you can share as a follow up, at a company, I mean, I won't take names, but at, let's say, large management consulting firms or large tech firms where stakes are very high, but you also need adaptability and risk taking. How are PMs encouraged to experiment when failure is probably the likely scenario? Um, because most of the times experiments are going to fail, very few are going to actually see success. Can you
yeah,
share maybe an example, like one example that you have seen either within your organization or perhaps any client organization on an anonymized basis, obviously, which
yeah.
you feel like, okay, this kind of a process of experimentation for new AI use cases, tools, products is the way to go?
See, I would say again, there is no defined process here, right? Because if you're trying to solve a problem, okay, so to answer your first part of the question, whether people are encouraged and should be encouraged, I would say definitely. And that is happening today, right? Because I would say a lot of corporates today have at least taken the licenses for like one or the other tool, and they want their workforce to actually experiment because they know this skill is needed. Now, how do they adapt, to what level they excel? I think that is still work in progress. So there is a sufficient amount of, I would say, backing from the management in at least giving access to these tools, right? So that is happening. There is a second level of encouragement to actually try out these tools and showcase in the organizations that how are they thinking about a problem, and how can AI actually solve it. So these two things are happening in the industry, and not just in the private sector but also in the public sector. So there is like a thick and heavy discussion happening on this topic. The second part of your question on how do you test out, I think I can just give obviously a example in a healthcare sector. Right now, healthcare is very sensitive, right? So today, if you ask me, can AI give you recommendations, or can you use any of the LLM models to do create any product in any sector? Yes, it will create some basic stuff, right? But can you really guarantee it? Can you validate that the output is right or wrong? I think that is completely on how you train the model, and that is where actually testing out or understanding which model is correct for what purpose, I think that is very critical, right? And specifically when it comes to paid models, because in like open source models, people are free to experiment and use their own data, train it. That is again like one trend, because a lot of organizations today are slightly wary on actually sharing data with paid models, and hence they are also encouraging, specifically if you have a tech team, to leverage the open source model and use their own data to train and create the solutions. So in the healthcare space, because it's a very sensitive topic, and it kind of cuts across, I would say, two industries, right? One is the insurance, where there is health insurance, and then there is obviously the classic healthcare, where there is from the provider perspective, and then there is classic like your online tele services, telehealth, tele, etc. Right? So there are experimentations that are happening, but I think the biggest bottleneck, which has been discussed, is where how, like if I'm talking to an online doctor, which is AI powered, what is the trust in that solution, what is the trust in that company, whether it can give me the right suggestion or not. I think that is where, like, I've seen where people buy into an idea. Okay, I can do this as the first layer, or the first guard to get the understanding of the problem that people are facing. But then, am I ready to actually hand it over to AI? Still not, right? So there are experimentations. People have tried to build something on this. They're convinced to a certain level, but then they take a step back, saying, okay, this is a very sensitive topic, right? So it depends on the industry and what problem you are actually trying to solve, and that is the, I would say, the confidence level that people are actually trying to generate in the testing or the outputs that people are seeing. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, definitely. It was very comprehensively covered. Thanks
Yeah.
for sharing that. Kunal, I think same kind of a question for you here, actually, because some of the points both of you made, especially Rishikesh, kind of led to this part, which we get a lot as a question in our field, because a lot of times when people are transitioning, they have to showcase their skills or their experience in a very new area, which might be nascent. So it's
Yeah.
hard to do that. Like, for example, if somebody's saying, hey, I want you to showcase what kind of AI product you have built and achieved outcomes on that product. I mean, the whole industry has existed for less than 3 years, right? So it's very hard to do that. But
Yeah.
people, despite that limitation, are doing it because you have all these tools like, the
Interesting.
vibe coding tools or the vibe building tools, etc., where it is possible today. And with new tools like OpenCloud, it's opened up a whole new kind of set of possibilities. So the question here is, Kunal, for you also, like, both as a professional in PM professional in the industry, but also as a hiring manager who might be making decisions on new candidates applications, when you are looking for potential in this field to become a great AI PM, what kind of projects or portfolio would you want, sort of like experiments would you want to see the candidate should have done, even if they didn't have, let's say, enough opportunity at the last organization, because maybe that organization was not very AI focused, but you don't have that excuse because you can use other tools on your own. So what would you want to see from AIPM candidates today?
Yeah, I think it's a very critical question because nowadays, like, if everyone would like to try and fail and learn the new tools and all the nuances, right, which is happening in all these AI tools. I mean, there are like a lot of things which comes into the picture. Maybe I think let's keep an assumption that okay, well, where we are not focusing any specific industry type, right? So all these AI use cases which they have worked on their own, right? If they worked using the tools in their professional world, I think we would like to know what kind of use cases they have basically worked upon, right? So someone must have worked on chatbot, someone must have worked on maybe building a kind of a process which streamline the engineering deployments, right? Someone must have worked on the, as I mentioned, like product analytics workflows and all, right? So there are like a lot of use cases which really would like to know. But the most important part is like, given a scenario in PM interviews, like you will be given a lot of scenario based questions, right? In the scenario based questions, when we understood a kind of a thought process, and the structure, how they are following, and in there, if they could able to add maybe some nuances on it, right? So let's say if you will be given scenario to design a kind of a application for, let's say, um, uh, for airport travelers or something like that, right? It frequently asked questions in most of the tech companies right now. That time we would like to know like what kind of, rather than showing like how you will do vibe coding, I would like to know like how he is building the thought to create a prompt to build that particular application using vibe coding, right? So what the candidate exactly would like to capture in the prompt or master prompt before he's going into, or he or she is going into lovable or bolt or replicate or anything for that matter, right? So uh, the structure and thought process is very important. Okay, what is the starting point? Okay, which all different screens that you would like to prepare, like what is the user journey that you would like to track, correct? So I mean, these are like basic questions or structures that we need to understand. Now, answering the question from the skill point of view, as long as if they have the experience, it would be good to reflect in your answers. For most of the time, PM interviews are kind of a hypothetical scenario based questions. But if you will be given a kind of an experience based on your, your recent experience and all, right, it would be good to project. If you don't have AI experience, right, it would be good to project something which must have been done as a kind of a pet projects, as a part-time work, to learn the tools, right? So I would encourage everyone to at least have a kind of a GitHub profile, where it would be accessible to everyone, right? And where we can see that, okay, what all products or projects that that person has developed, right? Um, and then they can also project maybe one of them, right? Like if you look at my GitHub profile also, like I have built a couple of tools, pet projects, like nothing related to professional, everything basically hearing here and there, and just trying to understand like how, okay, how Lovable works, how Bolt works, how N8N works, workflow completion tool, and so on and so forth, right? How maybe Codex CLI works. So what I really would like to know is like not the checkbox that, okay, he knows the tool, but what I really wanted to understand, like how he's designing an experiment, not a feature. So every feature can become a kind of an hypothesis. So what behavior we are testing, what signal we are trying to improve, and what should be the metric that I should follow. Then we can I understand as a person who is recruiting the candidate, that how he's optimizing his learning speed. Like, so best way for PM today is not the ones who basically ship the most, but it would be the one like who basically learns faster, and because that's where the organization shift is also happening. We are shifting from like shipping to like how we are quickly adopting to the new tools, and because once you learn the new tools, you will shift faster. That will definitely follow. Okay, so that's what it is. If it is an organizational objective, then also it will cascade to everyone. So from the good candidate, and also if you look at good organization, they don't. I mean, answering your first question, which you have asked maybe to Rishikesh, that there is no punishment on failed experiments. Everything is getting tried and well received within the organization. But if there is a low level learning, because I know a couple of my friends working in some big tech firms, people are getting recognized for how much token hours they are using on all these tools like Claude Code and all. So
Yeah.
you look at the gamification they are doing right now.
Actually,
Okay.
just to interject with, there's a very interesting quote that came from Jensen Huang recently that we came across, and I think he said something like, if you're in US, if you're $500,000 product manager, making that much money, is using $10,000 worth of credits in the year, there's something really wrong with that. Unless and until you're seeing like $500,000 product manager you're using $200,000 worth of credits or something. But I felt like, I mean, you're right. I mean, it shows that you are encouraging risk taking, but at the same time, it's
Yeah.
kind of like self fulfilling thing, right? Like you're basically,
Yeah.
all these AI companies which have a vested interest are basically saying, "Hey, you use more credits." I mean, that's going to help with their business. But at the same time, I mean, I'm thinking about small startups, Kunal,
Mm,
right?
mm, mm,
It's not about the large tech companies or let's say large consulting firms with tech arms. I'm thinking
mm.
about like the small startups. How are they going to? Because a lot of them have to also adopt AI, right? How are they
Yeah.
going to afford so much experimentation when the risk of failure is high? Can you maybe elaborate on that as well a little?
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, it's not about like big companies and small companies, if we look at from the startup point of view, because I think startup would require this kind of tools, uh, I think more than what the big organization requires, because big organization has like 80-20 principles, right? Your 80% of workforce is only contributing 20% in that whole chain of like contributing on AI initiatives. And but here you need all the 90-95% population in employees in startup would like to contribute as much as possible, right? And that's where the learning part and shipping part comes into the picture, right? And there is no boundary on in terms of role, right? So I would say startup has a good advantage of leveraging all these ecosystem tools. Like a lot of tools are available for free, at least for a few months, right? And within like creating maybe a first prototype and all hardly takes maybe around like 1 or 2 hours if maybe your thoughts are structured, pain points are covered, user behavior is covered, journey is covered, so many things, right? So
Yeah.
uh, what I'm basically trying to understand is it's not like they start with AI as a kind of a way to work. They start with what is the problem that they are solving, right? So what are the high value case, what is the low value case, right? And I think AI is just the enabler for them at that point of time. Okay, I mean scaling that particular product or learning in a very structured way in an organization takes a lot of time. I mean implementing AI, implementing any chatbot or anything reasoning tool or knowledge layer and everything takes a lot of time in preparing, because then you have to be very clear on your hallucination, privacy, safety. All the benchmarks has to be 100%, right? If
Yeah.
you're providing, like if I wanted to apply for parental leave and I get a guidance from the chatbot that your parental leave, the information is incorrect, obviously that particular chatbot is not right? So what I'm trying to say is that I think startup has a good opportunity in terms of like not only implementing but also applying the use cases and identifying the sharper problem and then picking what they really want to do. I know a lot of startups, like have been listening to a lot of podcasts of late. They've started with like 10 folks, maybe 20, maybe one. I forgetting the name. I think it's a base 99 or something. It was only one person startup, and I think he mentored a lot of revenue, and he sold it to a couple of his friends, and it has generated a lot of revenue also, right? So I mean, obviously there is a lot of stretch comes into the for every employee, but along with that I would say it has to be 10x experience, right? The amount of experience which I can imagine from maybe a normal regular employee to maybe the employee from maybe from startup, I think they would be having a lot of experience in terms of like not only from the creation point of view but also how they are basically checking all the evaluation bait and how they are keeping human in the loop, and so on and so forth, right? So I mean they can shift faster, learn faster. Like earlier there was a quote in agile code, okay, learn fast, fail fast, and maybe so many things, right? Now it's more like maybe we are transforming to shift fast and learn faster, right? So it's not like because they are right, because they win, because they are faster than others, they test quickly, kill ideas quickly. They don't have a lot of stringent layers on like dev, prod, this and that and all.
Right. Right.
And also they double down on what works, right? Like pivoting one particular feature from in a big organization takes a lot of time, right? So or transitioning from small product to or maybe older version of product to the new version of product takes a lot of time, right? So I mean that's where the fundamental transformation comes into the picture. So it's not only about the advantage by default the big organization has. It also based on like the best startup strategy, which would be, if I can simplify it, like start small, solve one painful problem deeply, and expand from there, right?
Yeah.
And wherever I think there is a chance, I think AI is basically the enabler in this particular case. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
I hope that answers your
No,
question.
it definitely does. And I think it did actually correct some of the perhaps misconceptions that I might have had with regard to, the resources that drive
Mm,
success with new technologies like AI. But
mm,
thanks for clarifying that. I want to switch gears a little bit and take up questions from the audience as well. We have a few folks who have shared their backgrounds and kind of what they want from this discussion. Um, there's one question that has come from Vineet Kane. Vineet has it's a pretty detailed thought process, which is saying that right now the hiring market feels a bit like a paradox. On one hand, everyone's looking for AI product managers who can innovate and think outside the box, but the other hand, actual hiring process has also become incredibly rigid. AI screening tools, strict ATS filters are auto rejecting great profiles if they don't check every single keyword. For the panel, how do you recommend an AI product manager actually cut through that automated noise and signal their true value when the system itself is designed to filter out anything that isn't a perfect traditional match? Brilliant question. Actually, I wanted to ask this, but the way Vineet has phrased is even better because I think it's his lived experience. He might have gone through this right now. Rishikesh, I mean, we work in this field, right, of people switching jobs, and I completely, wholeheartedly agree that AI has actually, um, unfortunately, made it easier to apply, but harder to land a job. Okay, and on the hiring side also, it has made it easier to get more applicants, um, and easier to kind of automate and make things more efficient, but harder to find the right candidate, right? So this we are experiencing from real feedback from both sides of the aisle. What should, I mean, we'll talk about hiring side later, but from a job hunting experience standpoint, the challenge that Vineet has highlighted, what would you say is the answer to solve that?
See, I would say it's a very non-AI solution that I have, or my view on that is very non-AI, right? I think your network will land you a job after a point of the time, right? So I think if you are applying, I don't think, like, I mean, AI has changed something drastically when it comes to job applications. We have all been through any experiences on applying on multiple jobs on LinkedIn's, Naukri's, etc., etc. And I don't know how many of like your applications have actually been noticed and you got like call from that HR, right? So I think, to me, yes, there are tools. There were tools before. AI has obviously changed something where people want to match every keyword and then reject or accept your application. We can't help it, right? This is completely out of our control because HR will definitely, HR is also a human, so they will try to kind of automate and bring in efficiency on how they operate. So if they're receiving like thousands of applications, obviously they're going to use that tool, right? But I think all said and done, I would say after a point of the time, after you kind of land at a certain seniority, I think like your network is the best way to get a job, right? And creating that network is very human. I think to me, landing a job or getting a job is as much as your network and people to people connection than just like blankly applying, right? Because again, all these job posts are online. We don't know what actually happens in the background, how the companies actually operate, how do they actually look at application. And also it also depends on like person to person, right, who's hiring. I mean, in some cases they look for a specific kind of an experience, and when you're actually trying to search for a job, if you don't have a job search strategy, you kind of come across any designation that matches your either expectation, where you want to get into that designation, or kind of sounds similar and familiar to your job or industry, you kind of keep on applying for that, right? Because then there is no strategy there. So I would say my view is divided into two parts in this work, in this like age of AI tools and trying to short your profile down, which is obviously the main goal of the AI tools to validate the profile. You need to have a strategy where you want to apply, how you want to apply, which roles actually suit your profile, so that there is a very high likely chance of your profile getting shortlisted and matched. And secondly, definitely try to network more. There are a lot of offline forums. You have a lot of HR consultants. Try to make friends with them so that not just today, but in future when you're trying to change the job, they can come in handy. But I think this would be my recommendation or my suggestion on this specific question.
I
So
think
just to conclude this, I mean, see, Pivot is a community, right? It's a community because it's a network effect, right? So we all are here talking to each other because at some point of the time we have tried to come across Pivot and try to be part of the community, right? So it's a community. So I think leveraging that community to the fullest, I think that is the best option according to me.
well said. Kunal, please feel free to share your thoughts. Just before we do that, though, I want to let others who have joined us today know that, hey, we'll be taking just perhaps one or two more questions. So, in case you have any other questions which have, especially which have not already been answered, please do share in the chat. But yes, Kunal, please go ahead if you can also
Yeah,
share.
no, I completely second what Rishikesh just said. I think networking and connection is very important. So working and networking both are like it should go hand in hand, right? And the question, I think Vinith's question is completely right. I think it's a paradox because On one side, companies say they want EIPM who think creatively, changes, like challenge assumptions, build new categories. But the funnel is so strong, like for maybe for one open PM job, like there are like 700, 800, 1,000 uh, uh, kind of applications that people used to receive, right? So the system is essentially filtering for predictability, but the role demands more like a kind of a, um, again, I will go back to that particular point where we need to break the pattern, right? So how we can break the pattern of like maybe bringing more original thinking, right? So
Yeah.
maybe couple of maybe steps which I would suggest. Maybe generic, but maybe I think it is still helpful. Is like we can't ignore the part that how we can screen, getting the resume screen, and at least moving to the first step where it will reach to the hiring manager, right? So where we can win, I mean, where the candidates can win, and that's where the most candidates fail as well, right? So uh, the product judgment is not only based on, or product, the role is not based completely on what the person has done, right? It's more on like what kind of decisions and judgment he has done. So it basically show the decisions, not just outcomes. Like the signals would be like prioritization, trade-off thinking, like how product ownership, demonstrating like AI thinking, not just AI usage. I already mentioned this particular part, right? What behavior we are trying to change, like how it is impacted, and so on and so forth, right? So hard truth is like, okay, the system is not perfect because it filters a lot of good candidates, and it's happening across everywhere. So it's true, but once you got even one conversation, the entire game shifts from keywords to thinking, right? So as I think Rishikesh rightly pointed out, that a lot of yeah, the screening system works basically on the keywords and search part and all. And although people are applying a lot of keywords, but moving from that to at least to the first stage is very, very important, right? So I mean, the goal should be very simple. Don't try to stand out basically on the resume stage, but try to unlock the conversation stage, right? I think sometimes if you know, like the hiring manager, recruiter, anyone, try to send a message. I think that also sometimes helps. Identify like maybe some PMs who can influence the decisions. Maybe they can send out maybe a simple message to the hiring managers. Like not everyone does that, but yeah, I mean that these are like couple of hacks which we can basically implement. Um, so system may design may not be designed for the filter for matches, but it offers maybe a given judgment. So
Yeah.
and these are not the only things. Yeah, but yeah, I
Just
mean,
one follow up that I have for
Just on other note, we need, maybe you can just create a application agent and let it crack, do some agentic thinking and let it say, tell the agent that you need to crack me an interview. So please keep on applying to different jobs till I land a interview or land a job. So that can be a good experiment actually.
yeah, that's an interesting one. Believe me, Rishikesh, there are a lot of people who are building that kind of
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, you just hand over, like, let AI crack AI. So let's
pretty
see
much. The
what
only
happens.
thing is then right now if you're getting 700-800 applications per job, you're going to get
Yeah,
like 7,000-8,000 applications in 2 years. Yeah.
yeah, but everything has been handled by AI, right? So you are applying via AI, they are screening via AI. So it's a fight. It's a
I
negotiation.
do have a actual question amidst all of
Yeah.
the talk in this is how much is the domain expertise or kind of industry knowledge a factor, especially during PM hiring? So a lot of it is functional skills, right? I think that's been the focus so far. But Rishikesh, you pointed out one thing around like healthcare example
Yeah.
earlier, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
very obviously one of the most regulated industry. So
Yeah.
it may vary industry by industry, but on general, when large tech companies or uh, tech consulting companies or startups, when they're hiring, how much do they value the domain knowledge in a PM candidate?
I would say it depends on like two parameters. One is the seniority, and second is obviously the topic that they are hiring for as a product manager or a head of product, whatever it is, right? So I think at a junior level, if you are like couple of years, 3 years, 4 years into the PM role, I think people are more open, right? Because the responsibility of the role or the thinking of the role is still not like a direct impact in terms of the product, right? Because there is always a layer on top of you. But obviously, as you grow in your career, you have like 10 plus years of experience. I think the expectations drastically change. Also, because by the time you are like having 10 years of experience, you have gone through your own journey, whether either you have stuck to one domain and obviously have gathered experience in that, or at least, so I look at it from two perspectives, right? One is you are growing in a vertical industry, say like a healthcare. Now you are a healthcare expert or a legal expert or a financial services expert. And then there are like cross horizontal or horizontal expertise, like you're doing operations, you're doing call center operations, you're doing what are, like if you are in the financial services, you're doing just like underwriting operations or policy issuance. So there you kind of find similarities. So if you're doing like an operations role, and if you're trying to jump between like in an industry which is regulated, then obviously there are people expect you to have that domain knowledge, especially at a higher designation. But from a PM's perspective, as I say, like, so if you are at a junior level, it doesn't matter much. But if you start gaining experience, if you are like 10 years plus, the expectations do change.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I know we have crossed our time just a bit. We have one last question. Do you think we can take that up, Kunal,
Yeah, yeah,
Rishikesh?
sure.
One last.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure, sure.
All right. I'll put that over here. So this is, I'm not sure who the person is, but the question is when you're evaluating somebody transitioning from a developer to a product role, and this is happening in hordes right now. This is,
Yeah.
I can't tell the number of people I've come across who are doing this. What specific traits do you believe that person can actually do product management? Is it more about the decision making? Is it more about the impact they have demonstrated? Perhaps something else? Kunal, just very
Yeah,
quickly, because again, we don't have a lot of time. If you can just share concise thoughts on this, that would be helpful.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
we'll take
yeah,
Rishikesh views as
yeah,
well.
sure. No, I think the question is very pertinent because most of the time when I speak to a lot of folks, I think they wanted to transition either from BA to PM or engineer to PM or architect to PM sometimes and all, right? So, I mean, it's a kind of the go-to area at least for next few years, and it will stay relevant because the way things are moving, right? Because here it's where human interaction falls into the picture, and that is basically answering the question that why this area is where it is right now. So it is very contextual answering that particular question. So simple truth is there are two basic ways to evaluate whether engineer is really, or maybe let's take an example of maybe any profession, any person wanted to move to a PM role. Whether the person has demonstrated a kind of a product thinking or whether it is a domain context. Sometimes domain context is also important. Like that is answering your earlier question, which I think Rishikesh has nicely answered, right? Domain context is very important. Like maybe look at the industries like apart from healthcare, like fintech, right? Cloud infra, data platforms, right? These are the industries where you need that specific expertise, right? But there are a lot of other areas where you may not need that expertise. Like let's say maybe selling product, maybe CRM products and all, right? So the point which I'm trying to make is as long as the person feels that he has that expertise and he is more strong on building a relation, identifying the product thinking, decisions, prioritization, and working in ambiguity. I think that is the spot which the person has to believe that okay, maybe this is a good area for me to grow into, right? Because here PM works lot of times on ambiguity, right? Lot of uncertainty that we have to deal with, right? So that's where the real win comes into the picture, because working in ambiguity is also kind of a skill. Maybe I'm giving maybe a lot of cliche statements, but this is actual reality, correct? So the strongest candidate wins because they have a transferable product judgment irrespective of the role they are into, right? So most of the companies, like within tech company also, they a lot of engineers wanted to be a PM, right? So and there are reasons for it. Not because the engineer is not good at what he is doing in engineering part. No, he feels that I would be very comfortable over here, and that's where I see myself, because we've been very confident that okay, my judgment, my decision thinking, strategic thinking is accurate enough, right? So I mean, these are few fundamentals I would look into, but domain expertise is important up to certain extent and up to certain industries. Does it answer your question? I think.
Yeah, I mean, to me, yes. I hope the person who has asked, I think, should also feel comfortable. But Rishikesh, we'll take your final
Yeah.
input on this, and then we'll wrap this
Sure.
on.
Sure, sure. So I think this question has been around for quite some time because a lot of people have asked me these questions in different forums on LinkedIn, etc. I think I've seen people from design backgrounds, business analyst backgrounds, testing backgrounds, and coding backgrounds asking this question that I want to move to a PM role. I think it has got a certain momentum now, specifically because in the tech space, because of like the co-pilots actually evolving and emerging in last 2 3 years. I think that has kind of catalyzed this expectation that I should move to a different role or a product role. I think my view on that still remains the same because a product role is a blend of everything, and now with AI, there is also an additional clear expectation on understanding the business impact. So if you are in that role of a coder or tester, design, and you are trying to transition into a product role, I would say just try to build your business perspective, right? Because I think you work on the problems or you have worked on the process in silos. You have tried to be, if you're a business analyst, you have tried to be part of like the problem statement, user problem definitions. If you are testing, you know the journeys, the workflows, the user experience. Obviously, if you're a designer, you are designing for user experience. If you're a coder, you are trying to stitch all this together along with the product managers, right? So you have worked in these silos at some point of the time. I think the vision that you need to set for yourself is how do I bring all this together and look at it from a product and business perspective. Clear, I would say 3 points. One is define the problem statements, define the success metrics when you're thinking of a product. What is my success metrics? What are the trade-offs and how I am going to implement this? Uh, the second aspect would be to measure, because every product role or person is expect to get measured either on the product performance or the business performance. And I would say that it is all about kind of adopting to a new mindset. So when you are actually thinking of changing, like some examples that I've given to people is we all use some or the other product 24/7, right? I mean, apart from the time you are sleeping. So you are a product user of multiple apps and multiple products, and we all come across problem statements and we all come across our biases on why we use a particular product versus why we don't use another product. I would say just simply tear down the product. Product tear down is one of the best options to really think about how do you build products. And it's a classic way of actually creating something, validating something, and creating that product mindset. I think that is what you need to do, and just be confident and go with it, because you've worked on some piece of the puzzles at some point of the time. You probably have not seen it through one lens. I think just try to build that lens.
Just wanted to add one more thing, Arjun, which came to my mind while Rishikesh was talking. Right, so one of the important trait of PM is like the trade-off thinking. Right, so every decisions involves a lot of trade-off. Right, like accuracy versus latency, automation versus, let's say, trust, AI versus non-AI. So the trade-off is very important. Like if someone thinks that okay, he can able to challenge the PM and can be excel at this particular trade-off decisions, and he if the person thinks that this would make a lot of sense for them. Sorry, there is a power outage here. Uh, but this kind of a kind of a thinking would definitely help them in terms of like bringing more clarity to the person, right? So comforting with ambiguity is one, and also the person has to be a little strong on tech-centric thinking as well, right? Although we are talking about removing the how part, but tech-centric thinking is still very relevant right now. So this all different nuances which will definitely help in like winning that particular role, at least for now. Yeah.
I think you're on mute, Arjun.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
sorry. Very important point. Thanks for sharing that, Kunal. Yeah, I think there's some perhaps tech issues at Kunal's end,
Yeah,
but we can probably come to a close for today's session. Thank you so much again, Kunal and Rishikesh, for joining and sharing, I would say, a barrage of insights which are very, very actionable and can be, hopefully taken away by people who joined and those who are going to see this later, and really, level up things for their career. So I appreciate a lot of your time and expertise today. and also appreciate everybody who joined us and spend their time learning more about what's happening in the rapidly evolving world of AI product management. If you want, you can reach out to folks like Kunal and Rishikesh on our platform on mypivot.work. The URL is in my signature. You can also reach out to them directly on LinkedIn, perhaps, if that's something they're comfortable with. I hope. But yeah, apart from that, I hope everybody has a good rest of their evening. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Take
Thanks.
care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.